I think I've been a success. How do you break through that male thinking that you don't belong there, that that's no place for a woman, that you should be home cooking and having babies and leave the union business to men? And it's probably one of the toughest questions, as I said before. Tough skin. Don't wear your feelings on your shirt sleeve, and if you cry, don't let them see you cry. Go home and cry, but don't let them see you cry. Many a time I went home. One time I was the brunt of a meeting where we were trying to put together unity. I confronted an iron worker and said, I understand you called me a bulldozer. And he said, yeah. I said, would you mind telling me what that was all about? And he says, yeah, I told somebody, don't get in Linda's way. She's like a bulldozer. She'll run right over you. And I thought about that for a second. I said, well, I might just take that as a compliment, and walked away. I went home and cried. And the next day I called him and I said, Kenny, I want to go to lunch. What? I said, I want to take you to lunch. I said, it'll be a public place, Kenny. I said, you know, let's go have lunch. I want to talk to you. So we went to lunch. And I said, I know you guys hate me. He was with building trades. But let me tell you what I have to do to get attention. I said, you hate me because I'm on TV. I'm on the radio. I'm in the newspapers. I said, I don't have collective bargaining. I have collective begging. I said, it depends on whether I have 6 votes on the city council, whether the city manager talks to me or not. I said, I filed grievances, and 2 months later the supervisor hasn't answered because he feels he doesn't have to. I said, if I'm not on TV, if I'm not embarrassing them in some way, in some fashion, if I'm not putting a story in the paper for public sympathy and public opinion to turn to my side, I said, I can't get it done. And I said, and the only way that I can do that is to be out front, be public, be available to anybody who wants to jam a microphone in my face. I said, I'll do it. I said, you've got a union contract. I said, somebody is doing your work, you shut the place down. I don't have that ability. And he says, oh, really? And I explained to him every bit of the law that says I can't do anything. No work stoppages, no strikes for city employees or public employees in Texas, etc. He ended up being one of my best friends because he understood. And he says, well, you still like a bulldozer. I said, I know. I said, don't get in my way. I'll run right over you, Kenny. And he says, oh, he says, I know that. But it was one of those things when I said, I've had enough. I've had enough. I don't have to prove myself to anybody. But that night, like I said, I went home and I cried. And I'm saying to myself, why do I want to go back and do this tomorrow? But tomorrow, the next day I'd wake up and I said, here I go again. Go right back into it.